Ronny Doe'S uncle is not a public figure. He never wanted to be. He never asked for a camera. He never asked for a microphone. He never asked for the 18 months of live streams, hashtags, podcast couches, and comment section warfare that turned the death of his nephew into the most speculated about murder mystery in the entire hip-hop culture. And by the time you finish this breakdown, you are going to understand why the 7 words Ronny Doe'S uncle spoke last night into a single camera, in a single room, in a single quiet corner of Anne Arundel County, are now the most dangerous 7 words in this entire saga. Not the most viral. Not the most controversial. The most dangerous. Look, before we go 1 inch further, I need you to sit with something. This case has been chewed on by every corner of the internet. Every blogger with a ring light. Every live stream with a Cash App link. Every couch podcast with a mounted microphone and a rotating cast of sources close to the situation. And in all of that noise, in all of that chatter, in all of that assembly line commentary, one voice has been almost completely absent. The uncle. The man who raised Ronny Doe from the age of 9. The man who fed him, clothed him, drove him to Little League practice in a beat-up Buick with a broken passenger window and a heater that only worked in July. That man has spent almost a full calendar year saying absolutely nothing. Not a live stream. Not a statement. Not a tweet. Not a comment. Not a whisper. And last night, in front of one camera, in one room, he finally opened his mouth. And what Ronny Doe'S uncle said has investigators in Anne Arundel County pulling files at 2 in the morning. So here is what I want you to do. I want you to hit that subscribe button right now, because we are following this story in real time, and it is moving faster than the culture is ready for. And I want you to leave a like on this video, not for me, but as a signal that you want the truth on this case handled the way it is being handled on this channel. Facts first. Records second. Rumors labeled as rumors. And archetypes named for exactly what they are. Because there is a certain crowd out there, a comfort blanket brigade of loyalty accountants who have spent 18 months protecting a narrative that Ronny Doe'S family never signed off on. And it is time for that narrative to answer some questions. Real questions. The kind of questions a family patriarch asks when he has spent almost a year with a notebook in his kitchen drawer and a list of names in the margin. Now let me tell you who Ronny Doe'S uncle actually is. Because the culture has been so obsessed with the celebrity triangle at the center of this case, the rapper, the reality star, the boyfriend, that nobody has stopped for one honest second to ask about the family behind the young man in the ground. Ronny Doe was raised, from the age of 9, by his mother's older brother. Not helped raise. Raised. Ronny Doe'S biological father was absent, in and out of the system, and Ronny Doe'S mother worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, in a stretch of Baltimore County that does not appear on any tourist postcard. The uncle stepped in. The uncle put Ronny Doe in Little League. The uncle sat with Ronny Doe through algebra homework at a kitchen table with a rotary phone, still nailed to the wall in 2011. The uncle drove Ronny Doe to his first job interview at a lumber yard off Route 3. The uncle co-signed a lease when Ronny Doe turned 19 and moved into his first 1-bedroom in Glen Burnie. The uncle showed up to every parent-teacher conference from 4th grade through 11th, even the ones that ended in a raised voice and a phone call from the vice principal. That is the man behind the microphone. That is the man behind the 7 words. And that is the man that the mask-slipping media apparatus never bothered to profile, because his story does not fit the assembly line of narratives the algorithm has been rewarding for 18 months. His story is not a viral clip. His story is a slow, patient, methodical account of what it means to raise a boy who is not biologically yours, watch him grow into a young man, and then bury him 1 week before his 20th birthday. Now here is what the internet got wrong for almost a full calendar year. When Ronny Doe'S uncle went quiet, when he stopped posting, when he stopped answering messages, when he stopped showing up to community vigils, when he stopped returning phone calls from local journalists in Anne Arundel County, the assumption everywhere was grief. The assumption was depression. The assumption was that a broken man had gone underground to process the loss of the boy he raised. And I understand why the culture reached that conclusion. It is the most human conclusion available. It is the conclusion a decent person reaches when a decent person watches another decent person disappear from public view after a family tragedy. But it was wrong. It was completely, categorically, dangerously wrong. Sources close to the family, and I want to be surgically precise about how I am framing this. These are second-hand accounts. They have not been independently corroborated by this channel, and they are being treated as second-hand accounts. Have said that within 72 hours of Ronny Doe'S burial, the uncle began a quiet, methodical, parallel investigation of his own. He was not begging for a platform. He was not sliding into a podcast host's direct messages. He was not chasing a Vlad TV chair or a Whack 1 rebuttal or a DJ Academics appearance. He was doing something older, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous than any of that. He was asking questions the old way. The way people asked questions before the algorithm turned every grief into content. Kitchen tables. Cousins. Neighborhood friends. Aunts who never post anything online, but who have known every family in the neighborhood for 40 years. The guys Ronny Doe grew up with, the ones who would never sit down for a formal interview with a detective in a taped-off precinct room, but who would absolutely sit down for a plate of oxtail and rice at Auntie's house on a Sunday afternoon in October. 11 months. 11 months and 3 days of exactly that. And on the 10th month, somebody talked. Look, I am not going to bury the payoff. I respect your time, and I respect the weight of this story too much to drag it out. The 7 words Ronny Doe'S uncle said on camera last night, and I am quoting him as closely as the audio allows, were, "We know who was in the car. We know who was in the car." Read that sentence again. Read it one more time. Because up until this moment, the public understanding, the frame law enforcement has never officially confirmed and never officially denied, was that this was a targeted shooting carried out by an unidentified assailant or assailants, likely operating from a vehicle in a residential stretch of Severn, Maryland, where the tree line makes visibility from any nearby window nearly impossible after dusk. That was the frame. That was the ceiling of what the public was allowed to know. That was the wall the family had been standing behind for 11 months. Ronny Doe'S uncle did not say he knows the shooter. Read the sentence one more time. He did not say he knows the trigger man. He did not say he knows the person who pulled the trigger. He said, "We know who is in the car." That is a specific sentence. That is a lawyerly sentence. That is a sentence a man says when he has been coached by someone who understands, in painful detail, exactly how far he is legally allowed to go on a public-facing camera without compromising an active investigation. And that alone should tell you where this case actually is right now. Because a family that had nothing would not say that sentence. A family that had a rumor would not say that sentence. A family that had a suspicion would not say that sentence. A family that had a name, corroborated by more than one person and shared with more than one detective, is the only kind of family that says that sentence on a camera. Now here is where the architecture of this entire saga cracks open. Because for 18 months, Ronny Doe has been cast in one role and one role only. The martyr. The silenced witness. The young man who was killed 1 week before he was scheduled to prove, in a court of law, what he had been screaming into the internet's face for over a year. That archetype is not going anywhere. Ronny Doe is still the martyr, and Ronny Doe will always be the martyr of the story, because that is what the timeline of his death, on its own terms, demands. But standing in the shadow of that martyr, we now have something the story has been missing for 18 months. An avenger. A patient, methodical, dangerously composed avenger who spent 11 months in silence while the algorithm chewed on his nephew's name and turned it into a hashtag and a punchline and a merchandise opportunity and a live stream thumbnail. If Chrisean Rock is the fallen queen of the story, and I use that phrase with all the weight and complication it carries, then Ronny Doe'S uncle just walked into the frame as the one figure in this saga who does not care about a live stream. Does not care about a couch. Does not care about a Vlad TV chair. Does not care about a Whack 1 rebuttal. Does not care about a DJ Academics appearance. Does not care about a viral clip. Does not care about the culture's opinion of him. He cares about a car. He cares about the people who were in it. And he cares about the phone call he is apparently about to receive from Anne Arundel County detectives who, according to reporting from at least 2 independent Baltimore County outlets, have already been asked to schedule a supplementary interview with the family this week. That phone call, if it comes when the reporting suggests it will come, is the entire ballgame. That phone call is the thing that turns a whisper into a warrant. That phone call is the thing that turns a suspicion into a subpoena. Let me pull the camera back for a minute and let the internet cook. Because the theories flying around the culture right now are, to put it plainly, wild. And I am going to walk through the 3 biggest theories the way this channel walks through theories, which is with a label on each one, a probability assessment on each one, and a clear statement of what would have to be true for each one to be real. Theory 1. Ronny Doe'S uncle has been sitting on a name that traces back to a runner in the extended orbit of the paternity dispute. Not a principal. Not a headline figure. A runner. Somebody who thought he was doing somebody a favor. Somebody who was owed a debt from a completely unrelated situation and thought he was collecting on it by handling something for a bigger name. The culture has been passing around one specific first name for the last 6 hours across 3 different platforms. I am not going to say that name on this channel, because this channel does not name private citizens who have not been charged and who may in fact be innocent bystanders whose reputations would be destroyed by a single mention on a viral video. That is the rule, and it is not negotiable. Theory 2. Ronny Doe'S uncle has audio. Not evidence in the courtroom sense audio. A voice memo from a mutual friend that allegedly places one specific individual somewhere they publicly claimed they were not on the night of February 3rd, 2025. If that theory is even partially true, that audio is already sitting on a detective's desk in Anne Arundel County and has been for at least a month. Theory 3, and this is the one that has the culture in a chokehold right now, is that Ronny Doe left something behind. A folder. A drive. A note. A journal. A dated document. Something the family found while cleaning out his last apartment in the weeks following his death. Something that predates his death by weeks and names names. I am going to tell you exactly where I stand on Theory 3. I find it the least likely of the 3, because if that document existed, somebody on the sister side of the family would have leaked it by now. Grief does not stay disciplined for 18 months when there is an evidentiary bombshell in a shoebox under a bed. Somebody would have posted it. Somebody would have sold it. Somebody would have handed it to a blogger for the exposure. But the fact that Theory 3 is trending at all tells you everything you need to know about how the audience is reading Ronny Doe'S uncle's 7 words. Now let us walk over to the elephant in the room. What does this mean for Chrisean Rock? Officially, and I want to underline this 5 separate times, officially, absolutely nothing. Chrisean Rock has never been named. Chrisean Rock has never been charged. Chrisean Rock has never been publicly identified as a person of interest by any law enforcement agency with jurisdiction over this case. The verified DNA test that confirmed Blueface as Kian Jr.'s biological father was supposed to close the book on the motive theory that has hovered over Chrisean Rock for over a year. Chrisean Rock has, in fact, publicly stated that investigators told her, and I am quoting her language now as it was reported by Complex magazine, "We know you didn't do it." Chrisean Rock says she is cooperating. Chrisean Rock says the case has moved past her. Chrisean Rock has denied any role whatsoever in the death of Ronny Doe. And I am not here on this channel to relitigate what a police department has apparently already communicated to Chrisean Rock directly. But here is the uncomfortable reality that Chrisean Rock's legal team is dealing with tonight, and that Chrisean Rock's public relations team is going to be dealing with in the next 72 hours. The internet does not read case files. The internet does not read police statements. The internet reads energy. The internet reads vibe. The internet reads tone. And the energy of Ronny Doe'S uncle sitting in front of a single camera and saying, on the record, "We know who is in the car," is not an energy that reads as case closed. That is an energy that reads as case reopening in slow motion. If you are Chrisean Rock's legal team right now, you are not asleep. You are pulling every live stream Chrisean Rock ever posted from January and February of 2025. You are cataloging every appearance Chrisean Rock made in the 2-week window around February 3rd. You are making sure Chrisean Rock's timeline is not just airtight, you are making sure it is airtight enough to survive scrutiny from a family member of the victim who has clearly been building something very quiet, very patient, and very deliberate for almost a full calendar year. Chrisean Rock's team is not celebrating tonight. Chrisean Rock's team is triple-checking every date, every flight manifest, every hotel receipt, every DoorDash order, every Ring camera clip, every gas station timestamp within 100 miles of Severn, Maryland, on the night of February 3rd. Now let me talk about the man himself. Because there is a certain kind of person in a case like this who becomes, over time, more terrifying to the guilty party than any detective could ever be. The uncle who does not sleep. The uncle who does not forget a name. The uncle who has a notebook in a kitchen drawer. The uncle who remembers who was at the funeral and who was suspiciously not. The uncle who knows which cousin's phone lit up at 3 in the morning the week after the burial. The uncle who knows which friend of a friend stopped showing up to Sunday dinner. The uncle who noticed that a specific car that used to park on his street stopped parking on his street on February 4th and never came back. That is who Ronny Doe'S uncle appears to be. And in every unsolved case I have ever studied, every single one, going back decades, the moment a family member of that specific archetype opens his mouth in public after a long silence is the moment the case actually cracks. Not when law enforcement holds a press conference. Not when a witness comes forward on a live stream. Not when a blogger posts a receipt. When the family patriarch, the one who raised the victim, says the word "we" on a camera, that is the crack. Because "we" implies a network. "We" implies corroboration. "We" implies that whatever information Ronny Doe'S uncle now possesses, he possesses in company. And a piece of information held by more than one person is a piece of information the pressure of an investigation can eventually pry loose. One person can be intimidated. One person can be paid off. One person can be relocated. A network cannot. A network is a corridor of runners in the opposite direction, every one of them a potential lever a detective can pull. Now let me widen the frame again, because there is a piece of this story that the culture has been walking past for a year, and I do not think we can walk past it any longer. Kian Jr. The little boy at the center of this entire saga. The child whose paternity was, for over a year, the fault line running under every live stream and every diss track and every viral clip in this culture. Kian Jr. has now been confirmed, through verified DNA testing, as the biological son of Blueface. Not Ronny Doe. Which means the war Ronny Doe was fighting, the paternity claim, the courtroom deadline, the mall confrontation, the "that's my son, that's my son, that's my son" live streams that went viral in 2024, was a war fought over a claim that the science has now disproven. That is the heaviest sentence in this entire case. Ronny Doe died believing something that the DNA has now told us was not true. And Ronny Doe'S uncle, the man who raised Ronny Doe from the age of 9, the man who watched Ronny Doe become a father figure in his own head to a child who biologically was not his, has spent 11 months walking through a world in which every algorithm, every playlist, every For You page, every trending topic reminds him that the boy he raised died fighting a war the boy could never have won. The uncle knows that. The uncle has known that since the DNA results dropped. And I would argue, and this is speculation, this is a read, this is not a factual claim, that the DNA result is exactly what broke Ronny Doe'S uncle's silence. Because as long as the paternity was open, as long as there was a plausible fight worth having, the uncle could tell himself his nephew died for something that at least might have been real. Once the DNA closed that door, the uncle was left with one question, and only one question. Who is in the car? Now here is where I want to talk directly about the mask-slipping media apparatus that has driven this narrative for 18 months. Because Ronny Doe'S uncle is not just breaking a silence tonight. Ronny Doe'S uncle is breaking a business model. There is an entire ecosystem, an assembly line of narratives, a corridor of runners, a machine whose entire operation depends on this case remaining unsolved, remaining ambiguous, remaining a source of speculation content week after week after week. Unsolved cases pay rent. Unsolved cases feed live streams. Unsolved cases keep hashtags trending. Unsolved cases keep the ad revenue flowing on channels that would otherwise have to actually produce reporting. The moment this case actually breaks, an entire tier of the commentary economy loses a recurring revenue stream. And that is why you should expect, in the next 72 hours, a very specific pattern of response from the loyalty accountants who have built their brands on this narrative. Expect deflection. Expect the pivot to, well, the uncle didn't actually say that. Expect the sudden appearance of a new distraction, a fresh feud, a fresh clip, a fresh scandal engineered to redirect the culture's attention toward literally any other story. Expect a coordinated attempt to reframe the uncle himself as unreliable, as emotional, as grieving, as motivated by something other than the truth. Expect at least one commentator, within the next 48 hours, to suggest that the uncle is being manipulated by someone in the family with a financial motive. And I want you to notice, as it happens in real time, exactly who deploys that playbook. Because that will tell you which commentators have been on the level for 18 months and which ones have been performing for the machine. Now let me get surgical about something. The phrase, "we know who is in the car," is not a phrase a man says on camera unless he has already said it off camera to a detective. That is the entire subtext of the sentence. Ronny Doe'S uncle is not breaking news to law enforcement in that video. Ronny Doe'S uncle is signaling to law enforcement and simultaneously to the individuals sitting in the room where that name was discussed, that the family knows and that the family is prepared to name. It is a warning shot. It is a public message with a private recipient. And warning shots, in cases like this, are almost never fired unless the person firing them has already triple confirmed the information they are prepared to release next. Which means if the reporting out of Baltimore County is accurate, and I am going to keep saying if and alleged and reported, because that is how this channel operates and always will operate, then within the next 30 to 60 days, we may be looking at the first real break in this case since February of last year. That is not a prediction. That is a read. That is a read based on the exact rhythm of how cases like this move once a family patriarch decides the silence is over. Let me address one more thing before we walk to the close, because the comment section is going to bring it up if I do not. The Blueface piece. Blueface has, as of the DNA confirmation, been publicly identified as Kian Jr.'s biological father. Blueface has, at various points, made statements about the case that ranged from combative to reflective to strategically silent. Blueface has, at other points, said absolutely nothing at all for weeks on end. Blueface has not, to date, been publicly identified by any law enforcement agency as a person of interest in the death of Ronny Doe. And I want to be blindingly clear about this. Nothing Ronny Doe'S uncle said on that camera last night implicated Blueface. Nothing. The uncle said, "We know who is in the car." The uncle did not say a name. The uncle did not say a nickname. The uncle did not gesture toward any specific figure in the celebrity constellation. The uncle did not point at Blueface. The uncle did not point at Chrisean Rock. The uncle did not point at any specific person the culture has speculated about. And any commentator who tries to tell you, in the next 48 hours, that Ronny Doe'S uncle's statement implicated Blueface, or Chrisean Rock, or any other named public figure, is running a play. They are turning ambiguity into engagement. That is not journalism. That is not commentary. That is the machine. Now let me address the audience that I know is watching this and thinking about the human weight of it. Because this is not, in the end, a story about celebrities. This is not, in the end, a story about a rapper and a reality star and a paternity dispute. This is a story about a young man named Karon. A young man who went by Ronny. A young man who, whatever you thought of his public conduct, whatever you thought of his live stream persona, whatever you thought of the paternity war he was fighting, was somebody's nephew, was somebody's son, was somebody's cousin, was the boy who sat at a kitchen table doing algebra homework in 2011 while his uncle warmed up dinner on a stove that only worked on 3 of the 4 burners. Was the kid who played first base in Little League and cried when he struck out with the bases loaded in the county championship. Was the teenager who worked weekends at the lumber yard off Route 3 and saved up for a used Honda Civic he was proud of. was the young man who moved into his first one-bedroom in Glen Burnie and called his uncle every Sunday, without fail, for 6 years. That boy is gone. That young man is gone. That nephew is gone. And the man who raised him has spent 11 months walking through a world in which every algorithm, every playlist, every For You page, every trending topic reminds him of the exact absence at the center of his life. 11 months. 11 months of that. 11 months of walking past his nephew's bedroom door. 11 months of driving past his nephew's little league field. 11 months of muting his nephew's name every time it trended. And last night, that man sat down in front of a camera, and he said 7 words, and he did not raise his voice. He did not cry. He did not perform. He did not gesture. He did not make a face for the algorithm. He said the 7 words like a man reading a receipt from a hardware store. Flat. Level. Final. Now let me tell you what I think happens next. This is my read, and it is a read, not a prediction, and I want to be clear about that distinction because language matters on stories like this. Within the next 2 weeks, I expect Anne Arundel County to conduct a supplementary interview with the family, based on the reporting from the 2 Baltimore County outlets. Within the next 30 days, I expect either a formal announcement of a person of interest or a very carefully worded press briefing that stops just short of naming one. Within the next 60 days, I expect the culture to see either a break in the case or a very loud, very public deflection campaign engineered to protect a name that the family has already, quietly, handed over to law enforcement. And I expect Ronny Doe'S uncle to keep doing exactly what he has been doing for the last 11 months, which is nothing more and nothing less than remembering. Remembering names. Remembering faces. Remembering who was where on the night of February 3rd, 2025. Remembering which car pulled onto which street at which hour of the evening. Remembering the small details that, taken together, make an unsolvable case suddenly, terrifyingly, solvable. Now here is the part that I want you, in the comment section, to think about, because your read on this actually matters more than you realize. Do you believe Ronny Doe'S uncle has a name? Do you believe he is bluffing to shake information loose from someone in the extended network? Do you believe he is exactly what he appears to be, a patient, methodical, private man who has spent a year building a case the old way, one kitchen table at a time? Or do you believe there is a 4th possibility, one nobody in the culture has floated yet, one that involves the family holding a name for a reason that has nothing to do with the criminal justice system and everything to do with a different kind of closure? Drop your read in the comments. Be specific. Because the culture is going to be watching this one closely, and the reads that land in the next 24 hours are going to shape how this case is covered by the bigger outlets in the days ahead. Do not underestimate the weight of your comment on a video like this. The bigger platforms read the small platforms. The bigger platforms read your comments. The bigger platforms scrape the comment sections of independent channels like this one for pulse and tone before they decide what angle to run with. That is how the algorithm actually works underneath the surface, and that is why the mask just slipped on a story the machine has been trying to keep ambiguous for a year. Let me close with one last thought, because I think this is the piece the culture is going to be sitting with for the next week. The 7 words Ronny Doe'S uncle said on camera were not a threat. They were not a boast. They were not a plea. They were not a cry for attention. They were an announcement. An announcement that a silence had ended. An announcement that a family had made a decision. An announcement that the 11 months of quiet were not 11 months of grief alone. They were 11 months of preparation. 11 months of asking questions the old way. 11 months of building a case the machine cannot chew up because the machine does not know where to bite. And the individuals sitting in the room where that car conversation happened, wherever that room is, whoever those individuals are, they know exactly who they are. They know exactly what Ronny Doe'S uncle knows. And they have, from this moment forward, a very finite number of days to decide what they are going to do about it. They can wait for the phone call. They can walk into a precinct on their own terms. They can hire a lawyer and prepare a statement. They can run. They can hide. They can do any of a dozen things. But they cannot pretend, from this moment forward, that Ronny Doe'S uncle does not know exactly who was in the car on the night of February 3rd, 2025. The game just ended in the middle of the round. The mask just slipped. The clock just started. And the culture is going to be sitting with that for a very long time. So here is what I want you to do. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on the bell so you do not miss the next update, because there will be a next update and it is coming faster than any of the bigger outlets are ready for. Drop your read in the comments. Tell me which of the 3 theories you think is closest to the truth, or drop a 4th theory of your own if you have one. And if you have actual information, not speculation, not TikTok breadcrumbs, not my cousin said, take it to Anne Arundel County detectives directly. Not to me. Not to the comment section. Not to a live stream. Not to a podcast. To them. To law enforcement. Because at the end of the day, this is not a story about likes or shares or trending topics or hashtag performance or which live stream got more concurrence. This is a story about a young man named Karon who called somebody uncle. And an uncle who spent 11 months learning the answer to a single question. And a car. And the people who were in it. And the fact that, as of last night, the culture now knows that they know. We will see you in the next one. And if you want to keep tracking this saga in the honest way, records first, rumors labeled, archetypes named for what they actually are, go check the videos linked on your screen right now. There is one specific breakdown on the timeline of the night of February 3rd that I highly recommend you watch next. Because everything Ronny Doe'S uncle said last night lines up with a detail from that night that almost nobody in the culture has been paying attention to. A detail about a specific vehicle. A detail about a specific window of time. A detail about a specific stretch of road in Severn, Maryland, that has been sitting in plain sight for 11 months. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Go watch that one. Then come back to this one and tell me if your read changed. That is how this channel works. And that is how we handle a story with this much weight. Not with speculation. Not with names of private citizens. Not with unverified rumors. With records, with reads, with respect for the family, and with the discipline to say, if and alleged and reported every single time we open our mouths. Because on this channel, the archetypes get named for what they actually are. The martyr. The avenger. The fallen queen. The machine. The corridor of runners. The comfort blanket brigade. The loyalty accountants who spent 18 months turning a family's grief into a recurring content vertical. All of them are getting named for what they actually are tonight on this channel, because that is the only way a story like this gets covered honestly. And the uncle who never raised his voice, but has finally, after 11 months of asking questions the old way at kitchen tables in Baltimore County, told the culture that he knows exactly who is in the car. That is the story. That is the whole story. That is the only story that matters tonight. And the culture, whether it is ready or not, is about to find out what Ronny Doe'S uncle has been sitting on for 11 months and 3 days. One final thought, because I know some of you are going to ask about it in the comments, and I want to get ahead of the question. Why now? Why did Ronny Doe'S uncle break his silence last night specifically, and not last week, and not next month, and not on the exact 1-year anniversary of his nephew's death? Why did Ronny Doe'S uncle choose this specific Tuesday evening, in this specific week, in this specific stretch of the calendar, to sit down in front of a camera and say the 7 words that have investigators pulling files at 2 in the morning? My read on the timing, and again, this is a read, this is not confirmed reporting, is that the timing is not accidental. My read is that the family received a specific piece of confirming information within the last 7 to 10 days, and that Ronny Doe'S uncle waited exactly long enough to make sure the information could survive public scrutiny before he spoke. My read is that there is a detective in Anne Arundel County who knew this video was coming, who was briefed on what the uncle was going to say, and who gave the family a green light to say it. Because no responsible family patriarch, coached by a lawyer, walks in front of a camera and says, "We know who was in the car," unless a detective has signaled that saying it out loud will help the investigation rather than hurt it. That is not how these things work. That is not how cases like this move. And that is why I am telling you, with as much certainty as I am willing to commit to on a public channel, that a supplementary interview is coming, and it is coming soon, and it is coming with a name attached to it. Not the shooter's name necessarily, but a name. A first name. a last name, a person the family believes was in the car. And once that name enters the record, formally, officially, on a document with a case number attached to it, the entire architecture of this 18-month saga collapses into a single, focused, prosecutable line of investigation. That is what Ronny Doe'S uncle just set in motion, in 7 words, in a single room, in a single quiet corner of Anne Arundel County, last night. Remember this video. Remember this breakdown. Because in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, when the next domino falls, you are going to want to come back to this one and read the comments you left tonight. See you in the next one. And if you have any information, actual information, take it to Anne Arundel County detectives. Not here. To them. Because on this channel, we handle it the honest way. And on this channel, we know exactly what Ronny Doe'S uncle knows. He knows who was in the car.